go. Welcome back to another episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for stopping by for another installment in our professional skill set series. So far, we've looked at the roles attached to people within an environment. We've looked at the objects that they carry, the locations that they carry them in. And today we move on to the A in the series. The A in the series. This is where, for my 2 pennies, a lot of people tend to become confused about the specific requirements of what we're looking at in the way that people do things. Right? There is this buzzword that keeps popping up: their body language. In that, apparently spotting the movement of a shoulder or the twitch of an eyebrow or whatever it is that exists in that particular situation. And of course, there is little doubt that it's a contributory factor of information, but it's not the sole thing. In that, if you spot this movement of an individual, it doesn't automatically mean this. It can't. And there's a YouTube channel that's popped up recently from a guy that is a staunch advocate of the pseudoscience that's connected to body language. His name's Vincent Deneau. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his second name correctly because he's a French guy, but it's spelled Denault. Mm-hmm. And I wholeheartedly recommend that everybody check that out. But what we're looking at today is the actions that people get involved in, right? The actions that people take. So it is so much more than an arms fold or this type of thing. It is like we referenced last time. It is the way that somebody walks towards you, right? It is the action of doing things within a particular scene, setting, or scenario that don't belong, that cause an anomaly, that motivate other things to be happening in that particular situation. Yeah?
Yeah, and I would almost add another A word in there, and clean for TV too. But
It's a
attitude,
surprise. Attitude.
right? Because what most people tend to, I think, at times overlook and oversee when it comes to when we're interpreting actions
Yeah.
is the attitude portion.
Yeah.
Our attitude at the moment, what signals are we sending that could then affect someone else's behavior and their actions? Right, Ben? Because in the same way, so we talk about this, right? Most people care, like what we project, we receive.
Oh,
So
yes.
we walk into an environment, we very well could be an anomaly. A lot of times in the work I do, I am an anomaly in different cultures. And depending on how I walk into a room, a building, a venue, and people all turn and look, right? Those first impressions, those first judgments are being made. And if people are taking in a certain manner of behavior, how you're holding yourself, that air attitude,
Mm.
then they're going to act a certain way back.
Mm.
So that also would bring in another A word, awareness, of knowing what it is that we're doing with that, right? And how we can work with that. Some will
Yeah.
call it impression management of sorts. Sure, if you're trying to hide certain things, but more of anything, it's more of, understanding yourself and going in, hey, I typically walk this particular manner. Some people can perceive that as being, closed off. People could perceive maybe your ego, right, type driven, or you just don't want to be bothered,
Yeah.
right, or unapproachable, and it could very well be they may be read in a book somewhere, Ben, and because you're just sitting there with your both your arms crossed, that Ben's just closed off. He's not approachable. But they're missing the part that Ben's smiling. He's nodding. He's engaged. There's a lot of other things incorporated in that behavior that in turn would then trigger me as I'm processing, being more aware of that, of then my actions, and that's where some of that influence comes in, right? So there's like a bigger thing. It's not just what are they doing? How are they writing something? Or what are they looking at? Action just incorporates so much, but it depends how much below the surface are you willing to stick your head. How long can you hold your breath underwater to see the sea floor at the bottom and take in all the beautiful things under the water, right? If we're just dipping ourselves in, which is what a ton of people do, they just dipped themselves in just because they've read a quick short story book because some person retired from some alphabet agency in the US and they worked in a particular unit, and then they created their own catalog of behaviors and body language, which, don't get me wrong, they have tons of experience.
Oh yeah.
But if you ever go through a lot of those books, it's just fluff. It's a bunch of war stories. It's how I became great. Or a lot of them are just ego pushing of, this is why I'm such a great guy and I did this and did this and this. And it's like, okay, cool. I understand. I give you kudos on your career. But what does that say for me? What does that do for me if I'm the newbie in this?
Yeah.
And we all have our intuition. We all have, that gut feeling of things. And we need to be able to validate, dismiss, and clarify that.
Yeah.
So, again, just to surmise with that, we're talking about actions today and taking in those contexts, but also look into it from the effect of what attitude, what mindset, what level of awareness are you bringing into that so that you can readily perceive and more accurately, right, read those
Mm.
actions and behaviors. It's kind of like almost text messaging, right? And I know we've all had one of those text message conversations go awry where someone texts you and you're reading it.
Stuff.
They don't
Yeah.
mean nothing by it, but I'm just having a crappy day. And the way that I read it, I'm going to take offense or interpret it a certain way. And I'm going to come back and write something sharp. And the person on the other end who wasn't having a bad day now sees that and is like, what the heck was that? And now we triggered into this verbal, texting war back and forth. When in turn, if we just would have had a video
Yeah.
conference like this or a phone call and hearing a voice
Mm.
on the other, knowing that nobody ever was upset, but
Yeah.
because of our mood and our attitude at the time, we misread and
Goodness.
misinterpreted, and
Mm.
therefore we get the actions wrong. All right. So if we're just having a crappy day, we're going to miss things and we're going to misread and misinterpret. And then how does that set us up down the road, Ben, if that is to occur?
Well, that's the thing with all of this, right? There seems to be a requirement en masse, whether it be based on a comfort zone or I don't know anything else, for just to learn an equivalency, like literally learning a language. This word means this. This word means this, and people don't behave that way. That's why we are staunch advocates for the critical thinking measures that are connected to let's call it observational work. Right? It's a fairly ambiguous term, but you'll all know what I mean when I say that. So in the interpretation of an action, right, you will have no doubt, you watching, I mean you as well, Jim, but you watching will have no doubt noticed that I'm moving a lot from side to side, right? I'm moving a lot from side to side. Now you could interpret that on the surface as, like autonomic nervous arousal. I'm excited. I'm engaged. I'm talking, right? But you then also have to ask yourself, how long have I been stood here? Right? Are my knees starting to ache? Are my feet starting to hurt from being in the same position? Am I not wearing comfortable shoes that's influencing my movement? And then you're perceiving my action differently. Granted, it's in a positive light. Brilliant. But that doesn't always happen and isn't necessarily the truth in a situation. So when it comes to that big buzzword of context, very important, I probably shouldn't have flippantly called it a buzzword, but it is, in a certain vein. A context changes by virtue of your interaction with it, right? Because an observed situation is going on, a conversation in a restaurant, people walking through the mall, whatever it is, a situation is occurring. And then you have had your thoughts about it. You've processed the actions that have happened, and then you're going into validate, dismiss, and clarify mode. You being there changes the context then. It's now no longer just a conversation between two people, there's a third. And the two people prior didn't expect the third, had no intention of the third being a part of it, or that
Mm-hmm.
otherwise you'd have been included from the start. So that changes everything as well in terms of the critical thinking measures that you would need to apply. And that's invariably one of the things that few people, just in my experience, bear in mind, few people consider in terms of the clarification of information. There's different actions that people will take by virtue of you asking about the situation that just unfolded. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our tried and tested, time honored clip to further assess and further analyze the actions that people take within this particular setting. And now we all know where it goes to by now, right? We've all seen the fallout. I think might be a good word to describe it. And so
Yeah.
it's about particularly how are these actions interpreted by the people there? How did the gas station attendant within his role, I mean, we can't actually see whether he observed the actions or not, but let's say for the sake of hypothetical that he did. Why was no action taken until the two women started fighting and then everybody piles out, starting to record it? Why was it that particular action that led to in that scenario?
Mm.
So let's start this going. I mean, we can say relative in this particular scenario. We've mentioned the role of driver in this particular situation. You pull up at a gas station, the role is 9 times out of 10, play your inductive reasoning, which we'll come onto at a later date. The most statistically common thing that a driver would do at a gas station is get gas. Right? The object hasn't been placed in accordance with that particular role, and so the action has to be something that is outside of the role of me, a driver, in that
Mhm.
particular in this particular situation by virtue of the placement of the car. And it all starts to come together in this particular light. The action of getting out of the action of the sole person getting out of the rear passenger seat rather than the driver getting out. It is normally the driver that gets the gas in that situation. So this action would tell us something else in that
Mhm.
particular situation. Is it such, like how this goes now for you guys watching, is it such that the driver at this stage, her action, staying behind the wheel because she's thinking about making a quick getaway, if we use that classic kind of detective fiction line, or is she just disengaged with the entire transfer of items? Is she just not bothered? Is she playing on her phone? Right? These are further critical thinking aspects we can ask of that particular action of not getting out the car, of letting the
Mhm.
person in the back do it. Right? So let's see how this unfurls. Straight in. We can say the action of the lady on the back seat is an action of recognition. She isn't looking to see who's driving. She recognizes the car, and before even the car has come to a complete stop, she's going towards the rear passenger seat of her car to retrieve items, to walk casually over. The speed is such that she is sure of the direction. She is sure that the car will stop in time. There's no question that she thinks the car's going to keep going. These are all actions that she's taken that indicate her recognition of the car in that particular scenario. But we can also ask ourselves from a critical thinking angle again, what if I'm wrong? That's not the expectancy of being wrong. That's not an emotional reaction to the presentation of information. That is just the continual analysis of further assessing the observations that you've made. What if you are wrong? Raises the question of what other things could it be then? And you get to reassess and reevaluate that kind of information moving forwards, right?
Yeah, 100% there, Ben. And as you saw too, even when she got out the first time and picked up the piece of paper, which probably had something important on it, I think we could almost know that there's been some sort of contact via phone, whether text or phone call, because of just the way she positioned herself at the back of the white car. She walked out to where she could see, and she was almost in a sense of as a lookout. She
Mm,
was looking and waiting. And as soon as she recognized and knew that the car was getting ready to turn in, is when she retreated back to the white car.
mm,
But she was out there waiting and looking, and just the mere action that we're looking at with her as well. Um, why this kind of tells me this isn't your typical, Facebook marketplace or online app. I purchased something. I'm going to meet you at this particular place. Light up. That they actually know each other.
Mm.
Just to mirror off that is that she went and looked, and if you don't know somebody, you're typically going to wait around or near your vehicle, and there's going to be a face-to-face exchange. She just not going to walk up like she did and go right to that passenger front door and open it up and just start going rummaging into the vehicle. So that would lead me through, based off that action alone, they know each other. you
Mm.
know and kind of like I think we touched on a little bit in one of the previous episodes of this. It was just the way that they interact, and it's heated. It would appear, based off the limited information we have and the context we're able to look in from this fishing, looking into the fishing bowl, is that this is an emotionally charged interaction. There's something here. There's people that are upset with each other, and so she's going around to multiple doors of the
Mm.
vehicle now as the driver is coming up to the driver of the white car. So she just leaves her car and just lets this young lady rummage through all the doors. And her attention now is focused on that driver who, as you alluded to, stayed in that car because they were probably wanting to avoid what we see transpired,
Yep.
because they probably knew or were probably told by the person in the back seat, don't say anything, don't start anything. I just want to get my stuff and get out of here. Because you see, it looks like that's a stuffed animal, is it not? It
It's
looks
sure.
like a stuffed animal under her arm and some bags. So that's what I was saying to you.
Mm.
Like, it seems like it was either some kind of either a child relationship, um, some kind of relationship that's broken up or somewhere, or some kind of thing between family members that are upset. Whether some kind of custody or relationship type issue. But this is an emotionally charged thing where this young lady wants to get out of whatever position she's in with the lady that's driving the dark vehicle, and is just trying to get her stuff. And the lady in the pink in the driver's seat, I think, was trying to avoid escalating this incident, based off her trying to stay in the car. But I think she's at some point something is said and done,
There you
because the
go.
way she said something, you can see her kind of yelling. There it is, provokes her to where I'm not going to sit in the car no more and take this. And by here, I'm sure we're hearing, if we're around any of these pumps or inside, it's probably a little bit of yelling going on,
Oh yeah.
and in the finger pointing. And the whole, like this is like, because you can see there's a whole, animation
The
pointing.
situation is growing.
Oh yeah, the more animated with it, the more this is going on. We can tell, hey, this is not going to be a good situation. Yeah, and now the only trying to get between them. So you see, she's trying to prevent this from happening, and then she can't
Fails.
prevent it. Because it looks like she's trying to break it up, and now the person in the front passenger seat is now going to come out.
Try and fix it.
Yeah.
It yeah, it's and if you'll go back over what we've been saying so far, at no point did we talk about their position of their gait. How they turned their feet out, that indicated whatever. It is simply the information with the information that's connected towards the actions that were taken in line with everything that's going on in this particular scenario, looked at through the lens of the roles that people have in this situation, the objects that they're using and interacting with within the detailed information that is specific to this location. And it is this critical thinking aspect that has underpinned the whole thing in that scenario. Could it get to a stage where you have to analyze something that is primarily based on somebody's physical movements? Sure. Why not? Right? There's 8 billion of us on the planet. The potential for some kind of situation that happens that requires that is possible. But there's so much more information for us to be able to observe that would be able to clue us in to these precipitating factors that would create a situation like this, right? If
Yeah.
you are aware of that change from, to use the analogy of going from first gear, being in the car, to second gear, getting out of the car, third gear, hands are coming up, and hands are starting moving. We're about to kind of hit something happening at the top, and if the gas station attendant is aware of this kind of information, at the very least, from the actions dictating that somebody is parked near the pumps, has no intention of getting gas. That's enough to put this person on the radar, on the awareness of the gas station attendant in this scenario. And yes, we've referenced the attendant, I don't know, probably 1,000 times at this stage.
Mhm.
That's just through the veneer of one guaranteed role that would
Well,
be in
yeah,
this.
but even that too, though, I would almost say too another reason it's mentioned because it's probably one of the more crucial roles for this environment,
Yeah,
right? Because essentially, they're the one that's in charge of the safety and security of not only themselves but the business and the patrons, you know. So they should be paying attention. And we're fortunate that we have this bird's eye view of this camera. Now, whether or not that's up on a monitor for the attendant to even see from the inside, because sometimes the camera monitors and stuff are in the back room, or they only have one monitor up in the front with them, and it goes through multiple camera views. And based off them, we're seeing it from an above level looking down where they're at ground level. So they might only have heard a yell or a noise and kind of got their attention, but they had customers inside.
yeah,
So, what is their level of attention to what's going on outside? Because they don't want people to, they have people come up to pay for goods inside that they have to give their time and attention to, make sure they're not things are happening inside the store of thieving or theft, you know. And we see that this is so chaotic that the driver runs over her own passenger,
yeah.
and the girl tried getting the other person out of there. So what caused that? Was there something involved in that fight that created some sort of medical type emergency? Because this is just that, or that's just a totally outfit of rage. The second attempt is more definitely for sure, or the first one would have been more accidental.
Mm.
Um, but this is definitely not a normal action.
No.
This is not normal things. So as you said too, the critical thinking. How does emotion theory play into this, Ben, or in those different levels of things when it comes to um, understanding what's happening or underpinning the emotional aspect in people's actions?
100%, right? When this again, the nature of emotions is something that kind of creeps up within the realm of pseudoscience, right? And there's a lady that I'm such a big fan of her work in this area because of the openness and honesty that she's taken with approaching the critique of the grander information that's connected towards emotion. Are you gonna pull a book out?
I was going to say, I think I know who you're getting ready to talk about.
That's
Would
the
probably
that's the
be
lady. Yeah, Lisa Feldman Barrett. How
yeah,
emotions are made. I can't recommend
fantastic
it
book.
highly enough. In short, you're like in very the thickest of semantic nutshells that you can think of. She speaks of the nature of constructed emotion. In that particular scenario, the indications around the driver's rage, that's guiding that won't necessarily be, somebody vying for her position as alpha. I was trying to think of like the ambiguous BuzzFeed thing that's probably going around, right? There'll be a number of precipitating factors that goes into that, and the more we can understand the motivations for the creation of rage or for the creation of a perception of being slighted or humiliated, which is very often the precipitating factor that leads to people overcompensating with rage and all of these other things that go along with it. So if we can think about emotional actions
Mhm.
being being a presentation of some events that contributed to how you constructed that connected emotion, right? In that, if in my teenage years I was relentlessly bullied. I mean, I wasn't, but I'm just describing one that could be described. If I was relentlessly bullied, and then me and you were out at a bar one day, and this guy, for some reason, across the other side, will not leave me alone, throwing insults, throwing jibes, and whatnot. But it's all directly connected to how I constructed that feeling of embarrassment, humiliation that is connected towards those types of things. I'll construct a similar emotional reaction based on these kind of presentations that very often go one way or the other. Either it will kind of revivify the exposure and, cause me to burst into tears or whatnot, or I will seek to reclaim my strength through rage in that particular situation.
Yeah.
It's important. Go on, mate.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you. I didn't want to stop you at all. I just totally agreeing with everything you were saying.
Good. It's a good job we're on this team then.
Yes, there you go.
So that's what we're saying, guys. In essence, if we were going to sum it up in a sentence, an action is never just a single serving purpose. It's never just about trying to run your friend over in a car. that was
Usually with anything, right? When it comes to that kind of stuff, it's never usually one single cause or
mm,
event that gets someone to a breaking point.
yeah.
It's usually a series of events, and what we see here is some can take time, right?
Right.
Some can be a couple events over a course of a day, a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. But we just saw in just a short clip with no audio, no anything, just from what
Mm,
we can observe from the
mm,
people and everything involved in this, we saw a bunch of different events occur. We don't know what was said, but with
no.
the emotions and the finger pointing in there and it turning into a physical fight, there was enough events there that escalated that. Because ideally, what we really want for us that are doing this and processing these things is we don't want other people's behaviors let them affect our attitude, right? We got to be able to separate our feelings from the encounter in order to process the event. And it's kind of like Ben, we've talked on and touched on other different things, right? The minute we are provoked into an emotional response, we are no longer working from a rational mindset.
No.
Everything from here on out is going to be irrational,
Oh yeah.
and no good judgments, no good decisions, no good actions come out of these type of events. And what we saw is that someone allowed someone to one. If I'm trying to look at this and interpret it, right, we have a driver in a car who I think, both can agree on, stayed in that vehicle to keep a situation from escalating. They
Yep.
didn't want it to escalate. Unfortunately, the driver in the other vehicle had a different motive, right? A different thought process, which is why they got out the car while the girl was in there. Because it's almost like she took advantage of that too, right? The more we look at it, while the girl that was got out and was looking through the car was preoccupied, sidetracked, is when she made her move there, approached the other driver, and then
Yep.
created that emotionally charged interaction to where
Yep.
then it integrated to where now the girl is like, oh my God, if she had to run around and get involved, and then the other person had to get involved, is like all of a sudden it's like, boom, you had that perfect storm of events that led into an emotional reaction after emotional reaction to an emotional decision to an irrational decision to we saw what kind of chaos
Yeah.
that can happen if we let others' attitudes, actions, and emotions charge us, right? Fuel us and fuel what we're going to do. We just saw the outcome of that, live on screen.
Excuse me, I muted that. But yeah, no, it's spot on, and like we could wax lyrical about this all day, all day. This isn't a kind of flippant flash in the pan thing that we've just noticed. We've done a heck of a lot of work in this area. So what we're saying with this, guys, is there's only so much that we can give to you through a YouTube video. So the important takeaways to take away would be actions rarely, if ever, have a single serving purpose. Right? There's always a kind of multitudinous emotional response through how we have constructed the particular emotions that we feel. Think of it why some people like some comedians versus some people like others. The corollary is still happiness, joy, contentment, laughter, whatever you want to put in there, but there's a different construction around each of it that
Mhm.
leads you to experience the same ha 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 laughter. that happens in that particular way, and make sure your critical thinking is on point, that you're exploring the different possibilities towards this. And Jim said it before: react professionally.
Mm.
Right? You can react professionally in a social situation when you're not working. Of course you can. Right? One of the things that I love to quote in this scenario, because it is from a movie, and I'm a big movie fan. And please don't get me wrong. I'm not taking inspiration from movies for my way of work, but it sums it up nicely. Roadhouse. When
Mm.
Patrick Swayze is talking to the rest of the team in their bar: if this happens, be nice. If this happens, be nice. If this happens, be nice. Be nice till it's time not to be nice. And then one of the guys says, "What happens if he calls your mother a whore?" And without missing a beat, he turns back and goes, "Is she?" Because if she isn't, it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right?
But that's
It
just
doesn't
it.
matter.
So many people respond to that emotionally. I mean, you see it all the time in law enforcement.
Yeah,
If I had a nickel for every insult that's been hurled at me about my
you'd be a
mom, my
rich man.
sister, anybody in my family, wife, girlfriend, anything, I could have retired years ago, Ben. We'd be on an island right now, relaxing.
Oh
But
yes,
that's what people try to do, right? They try to find the
yeah,
hot button. They try to find that emotional trigger, and the
yeah,
best thing you can do for that is train yourself in understanding of not having that button available. You know, having that trigger that's constantly on safe and can't be removed. You know,
100%.
as they say, right? I think it's our friend Bob Porno always said that there's no defense to kindness. I mean, people get really irritated when they're saying all those bad things, Ben. And all you're doing is smiling and nodding your head and just saying, oh, "Well, I'm sorry you feel that way." You know, it is what it is. Well, you know,
It. That's it.
hey, I don't. I'm sure you have a reliable source. I don't know
You've
what
been
more you
speaking.
want me to say. And I'm sure. I mean, that's okay. Would you like a phone number? I don't know what else you want me to say to that. What else can I do for you? You know, but I'm not going to give you that anger or that name calling or the next level approach. And it's just okay. Let it roll off your back.
It.
It's
Because it
okay
really.
to be the bigger person, and I think that's what we've gotten away from, and especially in the day and age too. I mean, now it's like people will say anything via computer message. You see all over social media all the time. There's tons we call them keyboard warriors, and it's like that's great. I mean, everyone knows you wouldn't have the gall to say to have people you say to if you actually came across them in person or had an actual interaction with them. But say what you want to say. If that's what makes you feel good and that gets you through your day, have at it. The fact that someone feels that they need to have that, or you're actually in their headspace, and that's what I tell people all the time too. Even sometimes I have a conversation with my wife, and I'm like, it's just crazy that people can live in someone's head that long. That wow, you're still thinking about that. That's been how many years ago? That still bothers you. You know, because we had a neighbor like all the time that would go by our cameras in our house and flip them like, what is their problem? Like, why do they still up so? All
Yeah.
because they hit my car 2 years ago and set off my car alarm, and I went outside and had a couple words with them because I'm like, why are you up in my driveway setting off my car alarm? And because I said something to you for 2 years on, flipping off the camera, like wouldn't never say nothing to me or none of us in person, but I'm like, it's 2 years and you're still flipping off the camera to my house.
Well,
And we look at and I'm just like, if that's what makes them feel better, is their life that terrible that that's what they have to do to get through their day? Have
that's
at
it.
it, man. I've got so much other things to do than to worry about you doing. It just baffles me with some folks saying like, my goodness, man, let it go. Like live your life. Stop letting life live you. Like just let go. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, as soon as the event was over, I had already forgotten about it. It wasn't this something I'm going to harbor every day of my life. It was just like I addressed an issue, handled an issue, and we're done. We're moved on. Like that's okay. But there's so many people that can't do it, or allow people to do this, and we see it in this video. And you'll see in the next segment we get into this, as we get into the R portion,
Mhm.
how these all connect. Because what we're doing right now is giving you through these first couple of sessions, you guys are getting the ingredients. You're getting the ingredients to a recipe that's going to make you a phenomenal dish when served correctly. And we're slowly getting there to give you those pieces, and then you'll see how it works. And then after you'll have an opportunity where Ben and I'll give you information on how you can actually get the full recipe, how to mix it, how to put the ingredients together, and see the world through a whole different lens and perspective that's just going to make you that much better and that much stronger when it comes to using this piece up here.
And that's it, right? So the question that we're going to leave you with is, what is the action that you want to take? We encourage you to subscribe to the channel, but obviously that action is up to you, right? It's up to you in that scenario. It would make us happy, and it is free, and it will keep you abreast of all of this information that we're bringing your way that's going to help you in every way that we possibly can try and do without actually knowing you or meeting you, right? This is a medium that constricts in some ways but opens up many others. So with that in mind, guys, let us all know down in the comment section below what your takeaways from this were personally, if you've enjoyed it, if you've applied it, if you've got any stories that connect to it. We love to hear about the journeys that you've been taking with this. And with that in mind, we're going to love you and leave you, and we'll see you next time. Okay, guys, take care.
See you soon.